Welcome to WHRO's Weekly Edition. I'm Jordan Christie.
And I'm Barry Graham.
We highlight the week's news and stories happening all over Hampton Roads. We're wrapping up March with a slew of stories you need to know. This past week, people from all over the community honored the ROTC instructor killed by a gunman at Old Dominion University. The ROTC cadets who subdued the gunman were also honored in a private ceremony.
The USS Gettysburg made its return to Hampton Roads this week after 5 months in the Caribbean, serving as part of Operation Southern Spear.
And a new government report found military dogs living in substandard, unsanitary conditions. These issues at 10 bases directly contributed to the deaths of 4 dogs. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. This past Sunday, the community honored the ROTC instructor killed by a gunman who burst into his classroom at Old Dominion. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh takes us to the memorial service.
Mourners filled the court at Cartway Arena to honor Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw. His wife, Catherine, says he cared deeply about his students.
I truly believe Brandon knew exactly what he was doing in those final moments. He was protecting people. He was protecting his kids.
ODU has been on spring break, but ROTC students filled several rows. Cadet Cecilia Faso described Shaw as direct.
Thank you for being our professor, our mentor, our friend, and upholding and exceeding the standard. We have the watch from here.
2 students were injured in the shooting. The FBI confirms Shaw confronted the gunman when he entered the classroom and placed himself in front of his students. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
ROTC cadets from Old Dominion University were awarded several service medals for subduing the shooter. Alex Macedo reports the commemoration took place behind closed doors to maintain privacy.
The Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, and Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Waymer, awarded 8 meritorious service medals and 2 Purple Hearts to cadets during a private ceremony on March 22nd. The cadets were recognized for their bravery and sacrifice during the March 12th shooting in their ROTC classroom. The ROTC cadets stepped in to subdue the gunman who injured 2 people and claimed the life of Army Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw. The names of the cadets have not been released in order to respect their privacy. The shooting is still under investigation by the FBI as an act of terrorism. Alex Macedo, WHRO News.
Virginia Beach City Council cleared the way for a project that will build 143 homes and a 9-hole golf course. WHRO's John Doucette says the renovation is taking place at the former Signature at West Neck.
The Signature course was considered open space developed with the Villages at West Neck community, but the course closed in 2019. It led to years of controversy about the site's future and conditions there. Councilmember Barbara Henley represents the area and opposed the rezoning request that will lead to new housing near an existing community.
If we do this to this well-established neighborhood, every neighborhood in the city should feel threatened that any day they could be threatened with development, particularly if they have open space that they thought was protected.
Council ultimately backed the rezoning as a compromise that could move past disputes and restore some golf to the site. The 9-2 vote followed hours of public comment. John Doucette, WHRO News.
A new prostate cancer treatment is now available in Virginia Beach. WHRO's health reporter Yiqing Wang reports that doctors say it can significantly reduce side effects, but may only be usable for a small group of patients.
The treatment uses heated steam to destroy cancer in the prostate. Unlike surgery or radiation, it targets only the tumor, not the whole gland. Robert Given from the Urology of Virginia performed the first such surgery on the East Coast Monday. He says it works the best for patients whose cancer is found early and is limited to one area.
You can treat those patients with a minimal amount of side effects, and also ones that are caught early that you can get rid of it and have their basically hopefully keep their normal quality of life that they currently have.
In clinical trials with more than 200 patients, some needed additional treatment like radiation as residual tumors remained. Yiqing Wang, WHRO News.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, the wind farm off the Virginia Beach coast is finally producing power. I sat down with climate and environment reporter Katherine Hafner to discuss the project's efficacy. But first, There's about a month left to vote on Virginia's redistricting amendment. As the campaigns for and against intensify, so does the language and imagery used in their ads. WVTF's Brad Kuttner has this report on the nature of that speech and what both sides could learn from a high-profile lawsuit.
A billboard in rural Page County features a quote from President Donald Trump, "Take over the voting," with an ask to vote yes. And in a text message sent to Virginia voters, a quote from Governor Abigail Spanberger criticizing gerrymandering is followed by a request to vote no. Both ads take their respective subjects' earlier comments out of context, and both are likely legal, according to University of Virginia law professor Kevin Cope.
Under U.S. constitutional law, we have strong protections for speech, even misleading speech, even defamatory speech. So there's a very narrow exception, and there are high barriers to allegedly defame plaintiff bringing a successful defamation claim.
The traditional solution is more speech. More ads is the most common, but filing a lawsuit under the narrow exception Cope mentioned, called false light, is another.
Not necessarily a false statement, but a misleading impression that would be highly offensive to a reasonable person.
You need not look further than Adams County, Ohio, to see how such a suit could play out.
Mine eyes seen the corruption of the Adams County cops still in mud.
Rapper Afro Man's song about a botched police raid of his house. He wrote an album about the raid, insulted the cops involved, and it went viral. The police sued for defamation, but Wednesday, a jury found Afro Man not guilty on all counts. Cope said such lawsuits come with their own risks.
They're likely to blow back and to call attention to the matter in ways the victim, the plaintiff, doesn't want to.
In Richmond, I'm Brad Kuttner.
Governor Abigail Spanberger is considering a bill that would help people getting out of prison avoid crippling debt. WVTF's Michael Pope explains the process behind it.
Humanization Project co-founder Taj Mahan Heft says people who are incarcerated often feel like getting out of prison seems like the end. But he says it's just the beginning, and it's often one that's slammed with debt from the court system. Not restitution, but a variety of fines and fees that courts assess for everything from having a jury trial to processing paperwork.
What that leads to is a greater likelihood that you're going to feel the need to do something illegal to pay that debt, to avoid being violated and potentially getting in trouble and having to stay either under supervision or reincarcerated. It will also lead to predatory lenders being an option that feels like the only thing available, which creates a cycle that impacts not just the individual coming home, but their families.
That's why he's excited about a bill now on the governor's desk that would limit the statute of limitations on that debt, which is currently 60 years in circuit court and 30 years in general district court. The bill would limit all that debt to 10 years. Here's Cammie Blatt at the Commonwealth Institute.
We have other ways that we can fund our criminal legal system, not off the backs of those who have the least and relying on folks to commit crimes and continue getting entrenched in the system to fund the system. We need to find other revenue sources in Virginia to fund our courts.
The previous governor vetoed a similar bill, but the current governor has until April 13th to take action on this one. I'm Michael Pope.
The USS Gettysburg returned to Norfolk Monday after spending 5 months in the Caribbean. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh says the vessel was serving as part of Operation Southern Spear.
Allison King and her two daughters waited on the pier for their father Dennis as USS Gettysburg arrived. The carrier, with its crew of 350 sailors, has been gone since October.
I was honestly relieved when I heard that they were going to the Caribbean this time versus out towards the Mediterranean and the Red Sea area. Obviously, it's best when they're home. You don't have to worry about anything.
Gettysburg spent 9 months in the Red Sea with the USS Truman Carrier Strike Group before returning last June. Captain John Lucas referred questions about the deployment to the Navy. The ship was part of a buildup that included the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
Dominion Energy's wind farm off the Virginia Beach coast has started producing power. WHO's Catherine Hafner has the details.
The $11 billion project, about 30 miles off the oceanfront, will be the nation's largest commercial offshore wind farm. The Trump administration tried to halt construction late last year, citing unspecified national security concerns. But a federal judge ruled Dominion could continue. The company is now more than 70% done and plans to finish by early next year. But this week, the first electricity from the project hit the grid. Just one turbine is fully operational, producing enough to power about 3,600 homes. The utility says the rest will slowly come online throughout the next year, eventually totaling 176 turbines. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
The production of power from the wind farm is a huge milestone for the project, but it comes shortly after the Trump administration tried to block the project from moving forward. Catherine Hafner joins me for a deeper look into the project's timeline and its expected efficacy. How are you, Catherine?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So, in the midst of the Trump administration's push to block the project, how was construction able to continue?
It was less than a month that construction was halted from the date of the stop work order. Dominion quickly sued the government after that, along with all of the other developers who were affected on the coast. And a federal judge in Norfolk ruled that they could continue, basically arguing that the government did not provide enough detail about the alleged national security threats posed by the project. So they immediately picked up construction after that. The lawsuit is continuing, but, the initial ruling might point you to what the judge is thinking on that.
So with the lawsuit still in progress, are there guidelines that they need to follow, or it's kind of business as usual until they get told not to, or to, keep continuing?
Correct. The parameters of the construction were laid out in the years-long permitting process, so the lawsuit doesn't change anything until there's a further ruling.
So your reporting is saying that one turbine, so this one turbine that was turned on, can produce enough energy to power 3,600 homes. How is that energy distributed for us here?
So the way that energy works is that it just goes on to the regional electric grid, and then, there's no way of saying this electron is going to this home. So when we say homes, it's just a way of quantifying what that energy means. Of course, we have these power-hungry data centers that are in Virginia, and, they're likely to get some of this energy, but again, it's just kind of a total energy on the grid. There are some times where projects or companies can buy a certain amount of power through power purchase agreements, but it's essentially ensuring they have a certain amount of energy or can claim that they're, sourcing from clean energy. But again, it's really just all on the grid.
Gotcha. So it's just a way to kind of visualize the amount that we're getting.
There's no way of saying, okay, this neighborhood in Virginia Beach is getting this energy. Mm-hmm. It's just the portfolio of all Dominion's energy now has that much.
So the plan for the project is to have a complete 176 turbines. Is that right?
Yeah.
So when those are all up and functioning, everything working the way that it's supposed to, what's that going to look like for residents here? What's that going to feel like in their pocket, in the way that the economy is moving here?
Virginians are all already paying for this project. Right now, I believe it's about $11 per month on your bill. There's some variability in that. It's kind of complicated, but the exact amount can fluctuate slightly year to year. However, the Dominion has a settlement with the Virginia SCC that essentially limits them from increasingly recovering costs from customers after a certain point. So after they've spent $11 billion on the project, which right now they're at 9 something, then they can no longer recover those costs for customers. So Virginians are going to be paying for this on their bill for a while over the life of the project. Eventually, let's say 20, 30 years down the line, they'll start to actually get a credit instead of paying for it.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you might want to make sure everybody knows about this project?
Well, I think one interesting thing, which is adjacent to this project, is that Dominion bought an even bigger lease directly next to this project that is not planned or, fully permitted or anything like that. But you can imagine in the future, there could be a possibility of expanding this so it's even bigger than the current project. But I guess, it's just worth noting that this will be the largest offshore wind farm in the United States, even with the ones that have come online recently. So I think people are really looking to it to see what can be done and how it works.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit more insight.
Of course.
That was Catherine Hafner, WHO's climate and environment reporter, providing a bit more context on the latest update from Dominion's offshore wind project.
A food program in Norfolk's Berkeley neighborhood is rethinking what food banks provide 2 years after it first launched. WHO's health reporter Yiqing Wang has more.
A partnership between Centera and the Food Bank of Southeastern Virginia is connecting people to fresh food right next to a health clinic.
We want to make sure that the produce and protein that comes off your plate when you have limited resources, that's what the food bank can focus on.
That's Chris Tan from the Food Bank. He says traditionally, food banks have focused on shelf-stable items like canned goods that last longer. But this site is shifting toward more fresh produce and protein. The site is open to anyone and also allows doctors to refer patients. The program has provided nearly 500,000 meals and served more than 40,000 people in the last 2 years. Yiqing Wang, WHO News.
If you need food assistance and are in the Berkeley neighborhood, you can visit the community feed at Berkeley. Visit foodbankonline.org for hours and more information.
The Virginia Zoo in Norfolk will host a sensory-friendly morning on Sunday, March 29th. WHO's Denise Watson tells us how families can utilize the service.
Springtime at the zoo can mean a lot of people and a bunch of noise. That combination can overwhelm people with autism. Whitney King noticed that her son, Joe, covered his ears at the zoo after begging to go. Joe has autism. That sparked the creation last year of sensory-friendly mornings. King, who is operations manager of the Autism Society of Tidewater, Virginia, collaborated with the zoo.
You get so many compliments, people just raving about how much fun their family had, and being able to take their time and go through the zoo and not have to worry about it becoming too overstimulating.
For 3 hours, the zoo will limit capacity. Timed tickets must be bought in advance. The train will be parked. Staff will offer quiet interactions with animals. The zoo will offer another sensory-friendly morning on November 8th. Denise Watson, WHRO News.
Freelance writer Vicki L. Friedman contributed to this report.
Better tech, more meeting and study space, and a fresh design are coming when Suffolk opens its long-planned downtown library in late spring. WHRO's Nick McNamara reports library leaders are optimistic that growing its footprint with a modern space will boost library usage.
Suffolk Public Library Director Clint Rudy expects the downtown Suffolk Library, which will replace the old Morgan Memorial location nearby, could double the number of visitors.
I think it's going to be more than that because we've just never seen the level and quality of building in the city before.
Research suggests Rudy may be right. Multiple studies report that library investment increases usage, which in turn bolsters student learning and achievement. Suffolk's library visits per 10,000 people are among the lowest in Hampton Roads, ahead of just Norfolk and Portsmouth as of 2021, according to the online Civic Information Index. Chesapeake leads in library usage on the south side, though it trails behind Poquoson and Williamsburg Regional Library on the peninsula. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
The Virginia Aquarium in Virginia Beach is home to 3 new species. WHO's Catherine Hafner gives us all the details on the new critters.
The aquarium's newest residents include Willow, a 1-year-old opossum who was found abandoned as a baby. Her caretakers say her favorite foods are sweet potatoes and bell peppers. Maple is a female striped skunk born at the Nashville Zoo last year. She's been known to solve puzzles quickly to get to snacks inside. Then there's Mahogany, a 1-year-old male spectacled owl that came from the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans. He's part of a species survival plan, meaning zoos and aquariums work to maintain the species population. All 3 creatures will become animal ambassadors at the aquarium, allowing visitors to observe them up close. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
A new government report has found many military dogs live in substandard conditions. The Department of Defense Inspector General found sanitation issues and other problems in the kennels at 10 bases. Nationwide, the report blamed poor conditions for the deaths of 4 dogs. WHRO's Steve Walsh reports for the American Homefront
Chris Willingham
Project.
spent nearly 20 years as a dog handler in the Marines before retiring in 2019 after multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He remembers being on a patrol south of Baghdad during the Iraq War when his dog Lucas reacted to the scent of explosives.
That's an area we were about to walk through without the detection capabilities of a military working dog. So that was the first, but not the last time my dog saved my life.
He kept a picture of a fellow Marine standing in a crater 12 foot wide, 5 foot deep after the bomb was detonated.
We were all at a safe distance. No one was injured, but it was about 30 pounds of homemade explosives buried about a foot down.
Willingham is president of the U.S. War Dogs Association. It facilitates the adoption of dogs after they retire. He estimates 90% of the people who adopt the dogs are handlers. Willingham says that's one reason why he was surprised by a recent report by the Defense Department Inspector General that found dogs living in unsanitary conditions throughout the services.
I've not had that experience when I was in the Marine Corps, so it was pretty shocking to understand that those conditions were out there.
The Inspector General found that 4 dogs died from 2021 to 2023. Investigators found serious issues at 10 of the 12 facilities they visited. At Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and Joint Base Langley-Fort Eustis in Virginia, inspectors found severe mold in the kennel buildings. Langley also had standing water mixed with feces. Handlers at Langley told inspectors that they couldn't get money in the defense budget to build new facilities. Willingham says kennel masters throughout the military are typically medium-grade staff sergeants and petty officers.
To get a new kennel facility or to get major work done, that's going to be well above a kennel master. Like, that's a little bit much to put on an individual handler when it comes to large-scale projects.
The Air Force trains working dogs for all of the services at Joint Base San Antonio-Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. Inspectors found that dogs in the training program were walked only 10 minutes 4 times a week. Short on staff, handlers tried to replace physical activity with audiobooks and scented bubbles. The Air Force acknowledges that 3 dogs died at their training facility. The Inspector General recommended the Air Force lower the number of dogs until more staff was hired. Spokesman for the Air Force says the service concurs with the recommendations of the IG report and is implementing the changes recommended. Dogs are used for a variety of tasks.
So a dog, he's right below the level of a weapon.
As a Marine at Camp Pendleton, California explains in a 2009 military video.
Our dogs are trained on both detection as well as patrol works. So if you set something, say explosives, narcotics, anything of that sort you're not supposed to have aboard a Camp Pendleton installation, then they're going to find it.
Willingham says the U.S. War Dogs Association keeps tabs on military working dogs. They provide care packages for deploying teams. He says the number of teams surged during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but they have dipped in recent years. Last year, the Special Operations Command for the Marines shut down its dog program.
So whether it was IEDs, whether it was enemy personnel, their primary job just came back to saving lives and bringing people home. And the only reason I made it home was because of the dog that I had served with. So I can attest to their capabilities on the battlefield.
He says he's hopeful that the report's findings are not a sign that the services see its dog teams as a lower priority. In Norfolk, Virginia, I'm Steve Walsh.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Toby Cox, John Doucette, Vicki L. Friedman, Catherine Hafner, Alex Macedo, Nick McNamara, Steve Walsh, I-Ching Wang, and Denise Watson.
WVTF's Brad Kuttner and Michael Pope. Also, Connor Worley, who produced today's show. A reminder that you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed. You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Barry Graham.
And I'm Jordan Christie. Have a great weekend.